Hello, my name is Susan Steele Mulholland, and I'm standing in the courtyard outside the home of Mr. Ron Kirschner, who teaches piano and is a performer himself. We'll then go to visit one of his former pupils, Mr. Mazullo. Come join us for an evening about music. Ron, I understand that you were born and raised in Doylestown.
I'm one of the few people, I think, still living in Doylestown who was. The old hospital, the oldest hospital in town on Oakland Avenue, was the one that I was born in.
Oh, my.
That's the one across from the Episcopal Church.
Yes, I used to live not far from there. After you graduated from Central Bucks, you went to Oberlin?
Correct.
And what was your major there?
My major at first was performance, which would be piano, and music education, but I found that it was too much to carry 2 degrees, so I dropped to just a performance degree.
Have you performed?
Occasionally. When one establishes oneself as a teacher, it's difficult to find the time, but there have been times in the past that I have performed, perhaps more than I have more recently. Locally with the Bucks County Symphony, and I did some 2-piano work with William Parch of Doylestown, and did some chamber work, and have done a lot of accompanying and that kind of thing over the years.
Oh, accompanying singers?
Singers and instrumentalists as well.
Well, now your life's work, your avocation and vocation is piano.
Correct.
How many students are you now presently teaching?
Well, it's hard to keep track because I teach a full work week, which would be between 40 and 45 hours. So I suppose I have maybe 60, 70 students that come in during that time. And so we want to hear loud notes, soft ones, and soft ones, okay? So the chords, I like to work with the very beginners. It just is very inspiring to see a youngster begin. But I have quite a few adults, maybe a third of my students are adults now, and beginning adults, not only those who have taken lessons in the past or in coming back to pick up where they left off, but quite a few adults as complete beginners. Okay, very good. So if you play that some more during the week, and before you start to play, think about what you want to do through the piece so that you're not surprised, you're prepared when you get there. Okay, let's go to another one then.
Well, now, do you have your prospective students perform for you, or how do you decide whether the mix is going to work for both of you?
Well, it's perhaps on a trial basis for a couple of weeks. Some do come in for an interview and decide that, yes, this is the place they want to be, or this is the place they don't want to be, depending. And then we just jump in at a lesson, and most of the time it works out, I think. Some will decide after a period of time that the piano is not for them, the instrument, or have other interests. The priorities change over the years. Okay. Now, this is the hardest part of the piece here. What we need to do is to take some time and go through this hands alone and get to be able to play this faster, one hand at a time, so that when you come to put it together, then the speed that you're trying to play it will be made easier for you. With a student who I think has potential, I'll work as seriously as I possibly can, encourage them to spend as much time at the piano and to develop what I feel would be the real fundamentals for them to continue as if they go on to the conservatory or a music school. Okay, Andrew, play the first 2 pages of the Rhapsody, and then we'll see how this has progressed since last time.
You are going to play for us later. I know you mentioned you're plucking the piano strings. Is that something innovative, or is that ancient, or?
Well, no, it's 20th century. One composition I thought would be interesting to hear is by Henry Cowell, who was a California musician, lived early part of this century, and he wrote pieces which were traditional, that is, that you wouldn't know anything that sounded any different than any other composer, but he also experimented with sounds. He got inside the piano and used the strings and plucked and did various things, and that would be interesting to hear. This particular composition, called the Aeolian Harp, it requires the sweeping of the finger over the keys as well as some plucking. And what I need to do is use my right hand on the keyboard to sustain some of the keys for the harmonic chords. I like 20th century music, as well as I like Scarlatti or Mozart, but I'm very interested in 20th century. And I like Prokofiev, Norman Dello Gioia, who was a New York composer, very much. George Gershwin, who was 20th century, a different style than what we call classical, but nevertheless, very nice. I'm perhaps a conservative by nature, and so I don't try to be a show person at the keyboard, rather to try to make the music as listenable as possible, not to put myself into it as a show-off, so to speak, at the piano, but to play music for music's self, right?
Than you as a performer, yes.
At least I think that's what my style is.
Well, we're going to ask Mark that question and see what he says about you. When Mark came to you as a student, because he's a Doylestown student that you mentioned before, what did you see in this boy who was starting late?
He came to me in his early high school years, and at that time he didn't have really any developed skills at the keyboard. He played a lot, but he'd really never learned to listen at all to what he was doing. And he had a great deal of energy, and he wanted to do all kinds of things. He was doing a lot of accompanying for musical shows in high school, but not seriously learning to develop any kind of keyboard technique. And so I, in a sense, had to calm him down a bit. Not completely, because you don't want to kill the enthusiasm which he has. But the real challenge was to teach him to learn to listen to what he was doing. And I think that has happened. Of course, that's a challenge for everyone constantly throughout one's life, to really listen to what you're doing.
Any field.
In any field, exactly.
Yes, right. Do you get great pleasure from your students? It seems so hard and arduous, you know, to hear people hit the wrong note, or to come in and go over something again and again and again.
Well, yes, I get a great deal of pleasure, and I think the wrong note can be very often turned around to be a funny note. One needs to make a mistake in order to know how to make a correction. Then the correction, it leads then to the next step along the way. If everything is played perfectly, it's played by rote, and there's no real insight, perhaps, to what's going on.
So there's a lot of give and take.
A lot of give and take, right. Now, if a lot of mistakes, of course, are the extreme, and we try to get rid of those, but I'm not a perfectionist in the sense that everyone needs to learn to play without a mistake.
Tell me what you feel about Doylestown as a music center. Do we offer a lot for music in area?
I think perhaps more than other communities. We've had some very good choral, or we do have good choral and instrumental organizations, both orchestra and I think, though, that the area needs to grow more in the performing arts. We've had a lot of visual arts, and I think it's been very valuable to the community for that over the years. But I think maybe the performing arts have been put in the background or have taken second place.
You'll have to spearhead that with the chamber. That's you.
So there are things happening all the time. I think it certainly is much better than it was 10 years ago. There's more happening on the music field.
Well, you do your part. Your students are always in a recital here at your home?
Well, in the studio here, we have a yearly recital, and those who want to perform, I never insist on anyone. It's their choice. I encourage. But if they don't want to, that's fine, because all they want to do. Some would stop lessons if they knew that they had to play in a yearly recital, and that's unfair just for them to learn the piano if they have that over their heads.
Well, looking back on your career, what were some of the highlights of your performing? Do you remember a particular concert that you did at a particular place or time that was important to you?
Particular concerts. Perhaps what was exciting and a couple of times was playing with the Bucks County Symphony, because you get to make more noise than you do when you're doing a solo recital. But playing with an orchestra is a very uplifting experience.
Ron, we're going to go visit one of your former pupils, Mark Mazullo, at his home in Doylestown. And I'm going to ask him about you. So you'll have to listen to our program to find out his answer.
I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
I met Mark Mazullo at the beginning of his musical career. He was taking lessons from Mr. Kirschner, and what he lacked in skill, he compensated for in drive and determination. Now, 6 years later, you can quickly see how far he's come as we listen to him playing selections by Beethoven and Brahms.
I've been studying classical piano since I was about 16, maybe 15. I was a sophomore in high school. I played piano by ear, kind of. I played off the radio. I played, if I heard a tune, I would sit down and play it, but I didn't start studying the, classical music till I was older. I wanted to play in the band at high school, and they told me I could if I took lessons.
So did you go to Mr. Kirschner right away?
Yeah, a neighbor down the street gave me his name, said he was excellent, so I just went and I played a few things. I knew how to read music. I took a few lessons when I was a kid, but I was a brat. And so he didn't want to come back after a few weeks. So I played for Mr. Kirschner a few things, and he gave me something to sight read. I sight read it, and we started from there.
Well, how old are you now?
21.
Well, that's not many years.
No.
To have developed as far as you have.
Well, I think you either have an ability. I think a lot. It's all coordination, but not only in your hands. It's coordination with the ear also. People can study piano and be able to play a scale like the wind, which I can't do. But to be able to make music out of something on a piece of paper is different, because you have to imagine what it would sound like. It's coordination between the hand and the ear, a lot of it.
Well, now you're a senior at
Catholic University.
And your major is music.
Right. Piano performance is my actual major. Bachelor of Music is the degree I'm going to get.
What do you think you're going to do when you graduate?
Well, I'm going to teach. I'm going to definitely end up teaching a lot. I'd like to teach things other than piano. Music appreciation, I think, is a very important thing. Music history. I know a lot of people that graduate that went into the city schools and just on their own, sold themselves and got themselves a TA position kind of thing, just teaching music appreciation. What I'd like to do right when I graduate, though, is get over to Europe and study music history.
Where would you do that? Where would you begin?
Wherever I could get a good program. Italy would be wonderful if I wanted to study opera, which is, it all started in Greece and Florence. If I decided over the course of this year a specific kind of music, you know, really turned me on, I could go, like, say, you know, Russian music. I could...
Or Austrian.
Yeah, or anything that I think might be something I could study to get a, you know, thesis together on.
But you don't want to perform. You don't want to end up in the concert hall someday?
Well, I mean, it would be nice, but I'm not going to make that a goal that I strive for, and that alone, which is what you have to do. If you want to be a concert pianist, you have to take the competition route these days, and that takes years of preparation, which I just don't really feel like spending right now. There's just too much I don't know that I want to know, rather than working on things that I already know and perfecting them. I'm a perfectionist to a point, and after that, you know, I need more input.
I heard you at your recent concert, and it was quite long, and you had memorized everything. How do you go about memorizing music?
Well, again, it depends. Always, no matter what kind of music it is, it's very concentrated. You have to, a lot of people memorize by the chord progressions, and it's very theoretical kind of thing. I do it more piece by piece. I'll memorize a measure, I'll memorize the next measure, and then I'll play the two together. I'll memorize the whole section at once. Yeah. Most music sounds more complex than it really is. Most, not all. But there's always patterns and things. And the more music you know, I mean, it used to take me 6 months to memorize one thing. Now it might take me 1 month to memorize a thing of the same difficulty. Just because the more you get familiar with the piano, you know, the more things repeat themselves all over the place, all the time. I mean, I'm getting to a point now where I know a few Beethoven sonatas, and the next one that I learn will be a lot easier.
I know artists have certain styles, and you can go to an art museum and stand across the room and look, and you know what it is, and you go up and read the plate, and sure enough it is. But musicians must also have certain styles.
Performing musicians, not composers.
Right.
Okay. Sure.
Yes? Well, how do you fall into that? I mean, what's your style?
Well, because I haven't been playing too long, my technique, which is just the ability to move the fingers around the keyboard and produce the sounds that you want to, when you want them, the way you want them, is not that great. Because that's something that is acquired. It's a skill. There's two parts of music making. It's the skill, and then it's the musicality. So my skill, I mean, it's good, and it's better than some, and a lot of people have a much better technical ability than I do. I think because I played by ear as a child, though, my musical aspect is a lot better, and I think my style is pretty.
Is it I mean, what would you say? Is it mellow? I mean, how would we put words to style?
To my style?
Yes.
Well, this could take me a long time to think of.
Well, let's think of somebody else. Can you put words to somebody else's style?
Well, sure, you have someone, the Horowitz, say, his is just perfectly clean.
Okay, clean, all right.
Same with someone like Vladimir Ashkenazy, who is a Russian pianist, and now he conducts all over the place, but he is technical all the way. I mean, everything he does. He can play the Chopin etudes faster than anybody, you know, but they're not always musical, you know.
So I mean, yeah, I'm beginning to see the difference.
People like nuances. Some people like a lot. Some people don't like any, you know.
Where do you fall?
I'm moderate, you know. I'm trying my hardest to work on my technical skill, and therefore sometimes I don't put as much into it as I would. And I don't think it's always right, too, you know. I mean, the composer, it depends on the composer. Some composers wrote so much into their music, like someone like Debussy would write every little nuance in there, in the music.
So he's programmed you.
Sure, he tells you what to do. I mean, somebody like Bach wrote his music down, just the notes, and it's all improvisation. And some people play it like an exercise. They just play it, the notes, in the same tempo. They maybe change the dynamics here or there. You can't do Debussy or any of the French or the Romantics like that. So I try to play Bach with some feeling. I mean, some people don't like it, but I think you have to have it in there, otherwise it gets a little boring.
What do you play?
Well, it depends. I used to play, like I said, by ear. Now I think I turn to the classics more. I turn to what I'm studying. I usually will play something that I've been working on and that I know already. You know, something. Bach is always fun to play for fun, whereas Brahms is, you know, a lot more.
Why? Why Bach?
Well, it's just lighter. It's, you know, it's something. You know,
As
stuff like that, which
what?
is, Brahms is a lot, is thicker. You know, so it takes a lot. There's more patterns. I mean, Brahms has his patterns, but they're hidden more in the music. Something like Beethoven is a lot more intellectual, and it's fun to play, but it takes a lot more time. I play things that I know well. I'll play something from a long time ago. If I don't know it by heart, I'll pull out the music and play that for fun. All playing I do is for fun. It's all fun, but really none of it's for fun because it's all for something more than fun.
You mentioned to me that you might be interested in becoming a critic.
It would be nice, yeah.
And of course, the more you study, the more
Sure.
you have to know.
I think that the main thing with being a critic is you have to have a lot of self-confidence. And it has to go even more than self-confidence. It has to be ego. Just pure ego.
I think you might be able to do that.
Well, maybe. I think as I get older, I still have a problem, you know, telling someone what to do. But I think, you know, if I went on to further study, I would definitely know enough. And have enough interest. I mean, you have to have interest in all kinds of things to be a critic. You can't say, I'm only going to go to concerts that have, you know,
only
this.
what I like.
Sure. So, I mean, I definitely am interested in hearing anything. And as for my ability to judge someone, it only can grow.
Yes.
You know.
Well, for instance, you told me that Mr. Kirschner critiqued you before your recent recital.
Sure.
What did he say to you that helped you? Do you remember?
Well, there's certain things, like in one of the Beethoven sonatas, my rhythm was kind of off.
Give us a...
Well, it's the fourth movement of one of them. It starts on a downbeat. It's da-da-da, and it's... But I was going... And it would mess up. I mean, it messed up the whole movement. I wasn't doing it... I mean, I knew that it was a downbeat. I just wasn't bringing it out as much. And it takes... You can, but it's very difficult to listen while you're playing. It's something that my teacher down in Washington says is my worst problem. You have to listen to yourself, and it's hard. I mean,
Could you tape yourself and then listen
yeah,
to it?
and I do that all the time. But you can't always rely on a tape recorder as to the human ear.
So you're telling me it's necessary to have a teacher when you're developing?
Certainly. And it's always necessary to have somebody listen to you before you perform, even if you're not going to perform. You can't grow as a pianist without having somebody to listen to you. You just don't know what it sounds like.
Well, let's try you out as a critic. Out on the limb. What would you say about Mr. Kirschner's playing?
Well, the last time I heard him was 2 years ago, and I didn't even think I wanted to be a critic then.
Oh.
I don't even remember. I remember he played with a woman at the Mercer Museum. They played the Schubert two piano. I mean, no, one piano, four hands. And it was great. It was perfectly musical, and technically he's very good. I mean, his scales, and I think he's more of a Mozart player. And my teacher in Washington is a romantic player. Mr. Kirschner does very well in the Schubert, Mozart, just the scalar passages and the harmonies. He brings them out with finesse, I think is a good word. He doesn't over-push anything. Everything's very subtle in his playing.
We are going to be looking forward to hearing about what happens to you.
Okay, so am I.
And we wish you a lot of luck your senior year.
Artbeat would like to hear from our viewers. Drop us a line and let us know what you think about the show. Send your letters to Suburban Community Television, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18901. Please be sure to include the name of your cable system. That's Suburban Community TV, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18901.
This is Susan Steele Mulholland. Thank you for joining us, and good night.